Good evening, everyone. My name is Brenda Guha, and I'm the Programs Assistant and Symposium Coordinator here at Dance NYC. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I identify as a queer, caste-privileged, non-disabled South Asian American woman currently located on the Lenape territory on what is now known as Manhattan. I'm wearing a black shirt with a blue blazer, no longer silver dangly oxidized earrings because it makes too much noise, maroon lipstick, hair is pulled back in a high bun, and a white purple light on me against a white wall. First, thank you for joining us on this digital experience and for being adaptable in these challenging times. We are currently live streaming on YouTube instead of Facebook tonight. Thus, as we are at the mercy of technology, we want to remind you that there may be delays, sound issues, and changing circumstances that may occur during our time together. We invite you to extend grace and patience to each other as we manage this virtual landscape. We will also upload this conversation to Facebook after the live stream is complete. Second, ASL interpretation by Sarah Ahn and Brandon Kazan-Maddox from LC Interpreting Services, as well as closed captioning services by Stacy Potenza of the Viscardi Center, will be available throughout the entire event. At times, due to Zoom to Facebook streaming difficulties, the closed captioning service does not stream as accurately as we'd like it to, and therefore, live transcription will be available via the Dance NYC stream to text link, which should be now posted in your chat. Give me one moment. All right, third, please note that this session is being recorded and it will be uploaded to Facebook right under the videos tab after and on our YouTube page after this live stream event. So please note that the closed captions do not carry over to the Facebook playback and most likely the YouTube playback as well. And so we will re-upload. These recordings will then be available with closed captioning on our YouTube channel after this series is over. Fourth, feel free to post in the comments section in our live chat below on YouTube. And if you have any questions or comments for the speakers, and we will gather them and we will make sure that we include it in our Q&A at the end of the discussion. In the case that we may need to quickly end this session due to disruption, have no fear, you will hear us say abort 3 times and then end the session. And then we will resume within 5 minutes right here back on YouTube Live. Lastly, we hope that you will help us amplify these conversations. You can hit the share button to share this conversation directly on your page. You can repost on your social media, and you can tag us at Twitter at DanceNYC, Instagram at dance.nyc, and Facebook Dance/NYC using the hashtag artists are necessary workers, hashtag Dance NYC Live. As we continue to host these conversations, we are learning how to create dialogue spaces that reflect both our values as a team and organization. And the intention of the series is to dive deeper and hold space for these experiences of dance workers within our community. We're committed to hosting these conversations in as wide a format as possible by, for example, using Facebook or YouTube rather than only Zoom registration for participants. However, as these conversations continue to move through highly public spaces, we have felt it's important to articulate a series of community guidelines by which we hope to hold this space and invite our participants to honor them as we share this space together. These guidelines are a living commitment and may grow and/or change to reflect our learning as a staff, organization, and in relationship to you, its participants and beneficiaries. If you have suggestions, additions, and/or feedback to these guidelines, or for any part of our programming, we invite you to share them via our post-event survey or via email at info@dance.nyc. We ask that folks participating and/or benefiting from today's event via comments on YouTube follow these guidelines. Number one, upon participating in this event as a viewer or commenter, you are entering a virtual space of learning, reflection, respect, and accountability that is based on Dance NYC's values of justice, equity, and inclusion. This means that we agree to share our opinions, challenge perspectives, and engage or debate respectfully, and acknowledge and course correct if harm is caused. Honor everyone's personhood and humanity, and lastly, not tolerate speech that is disparaging, abusive, violent, or that is intended to defame someone's character publicly. Lastly, if anyone acts in violation of these guidelines, they will either be warned and asked to course correct or removed depending on the severity of the action. We thank you for your collective agreement to these guidelines to ensure that our space remains generative for and respectful of our community. And now we will begin What's Next for Festivals, Artists Are Necessary Workers Facebook Live Conversation Series. As a way of deepening our work and learning in racial justice, we regularly practice land acknowledgements at meetings and public convenings to recognize our country's violent history and its legacy in the space that we occupy. This practice is currently under development with the guidance of Indigenous dance artist and activist Emily Johnson to ensure that we embody this allyship. This includes taking actionable steps towards reparations in this initial instance by nurturing relationships with local Indigenous and First Nations artists and organizations, and making pathways for Lenape artists and leaders to return to Lenape Hoking today. I would like to acknowledge that the city of New York is on stolen land, more specifically, Lenape Hoking, the unceded homeland of the Lenape people, who are also recognized federally as the Delaware Nation of Oklahoma, Anadarko, Oklahoma, Delaware Tribe of Indians, Bartlesville, Oklahoma, Stockbridge Munsee Community, Bowler, Wisconsin, and in Canada, Munsee Delaware Nation, Moravian of the Thames First Nation, Delaware of Six Nations. The Lenape people are the original inhabitants and caretakers of this land and gave Manhattan Island its name, Mannahatta, meaning hilly island or place where we go to gather the wood for the bows. Additionally, as we are gathered digitally and inspired by Adrian Wong of Spiderweb Show in what is currently called Canada, I invite us to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking that we use every day. We are using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many rural Indigenous communities, and at times leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to climate change that disproportionately impacts Indigenous communities worldwide. We acknowledge that changing these inequities are our shared responsibility, as are our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. We recognize that as an organization based in New York City, we have benefited and continue to benefit from the systemic displacement and subsequent erasure of Lenape people and governance on their land. Please join me in taking a moment to recognize and reflect on the centuries of violence, displacement, forced migration, and settlement here, as well as the centuries of resilience and leadership of all Indigenous and First Nations people on Turtle Island that have led to our presence and livelihoods in New York City today. Let us please take a moment of silence. Continuing our practice of recognition, we would like to name openly the legacies of the African slave trade, migration and immigration patterns, the disability rights and disability justice movements, and the LGBTQ+ fight for justice. These areas and tactics of oppression through which white supremacy and settler colonialism have enacted and sustained its power over time are not the only areas, but rather the main focuses of Dance NYC's ongoing historical acknowledgement practice and justice, equity, and inclusion strategy. We would like to also take a moment of silence in remembrance of the victims of COVID-19 around the world and to honor the unseen labor of the many people that continue to ensure the safety and well-being of our community in these trying times, including but not limited to frontline workers. Lastly, and certainly not least, we also acknowledge and mourn Tiffany Harris, Rhea Milton, Dominique Remy Fells, Justin Howell, Sean Monterosa, Jamel Floyd, Nina Pop, Tony McDade, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, David McAtee, and all Black people whose lives have been taken by the actions of white people, institutions, and systems, and the many accomplices, witnesses, and beneficiaries of white supremacy who have actively participated in or stood by and observed in silence. Over the past few weeks, we have also witnessed as a nation and city the palpable impacts that systemic racism has on the lives of Black and Indigenous people, peoples of color, immigrants, disabled and immunosuppressed people, LGBTQ+ people, and people living in low-income communities and poverty impacted by COVID-19. White supremacy continuously manifests itself in violence at the hands of law enforcement and its interpersonal interactions, our government's response to COVID-19, and our cultural institutions. Let us please take a final moment of silence together. Thank you. For those of you who are new to the organization, Dance NYC delivers 5 core services for the field: advocacy, action-oriented research, leadership training and convening, technological resources through our website, and grant making, all to empower dance makers and cultural workers to build audiences and to strengthen the collective voice for the art form. Dance NYC works in alliance with the national organization Dance USA to drive local national synergies in dance service delivery. You can learn more about our programs at our website at dance.nyc. On May 14th, Dance NYC launched a campaign declaring loudly that artists are necessary workers. This campaign, which will run through till next week, we're almost there, demands the acknowledgement, representation, and integration of dance and arts workers into the decision-making that will envision our future post-pandemic. Artists serve New York City at every level, leading tourism, strengthening education, fueling the economy, and ensuring our health, wellness, and imaginations. So far, Dance NYC has released the Artists Are Necessary Workers campaign video featuring members of our dance community displaying our strength and power in numbers. We've written a letter and are now working with the Mayor's Office of New York City to insist on dance having a seat at the table. And lastly, we have curated this series of public conversations with arts workers to discuss challenges, offer considerations, and envision our way forward as a field. Our conversation today will be on the festival model, its significant role in dance presentation, and its viability moving forward. I'll turn it over to our Executive Director of Dance NYC, Alejandra Duque Cifuentes. Welcome, Alejandra. Are you? There she is. Lovely.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for you and your patience as we are navigating a switch into a new platform. Also, very transparently, very fragile internet service today on my behalf as the host for today. So we are going really, which is a complete reflection of what our field has been experiencing, what our festival producers have been experiencing, and what so many of our dance artists have been experiencing as we are shifting the models and the ways in which we work. And my name is Alejandra Duque Cifuentes, and I am the Executive Director of Dance NYC. My gender pronoun she, her. From my studio apartment in Regal Park, Queens, New York, the land identifies a fair-skinned Latinx non-disabled woman. I have fair skin. I have a white sleeveless top. My hair is brown and it is down. And I have an orange background behind me with the Dance NYC logo to your right in the top right-hand side of my screen. And so I'm gonna go ahead and actually introduce all of the members of our panel. You'll go ahead and jump right in. All right. How are we all doing, everybody? So we have started a little bit choppily with all of our different internet snafus, but I want to hear a little bit about each of you. We brought you all together for this conversation because we've recognized that each of you and many other colleagues in the field that we couldn't invite all to the same conversation have been leading festivals as a key component of our work in dance and artistic practice for many years. Some of you lead hyper-local festivals, some of you lead regional festivals, some of you lead festivals that take place in New York City but are international in nature. And so we're really looking at a really important part of our dance making community. You're consistently providing opportunities and for people to come together. A little bit more about the time to introduce yourselves, tell us about who you are, where you work, the nature of the festival that you lead, and some of the impacts that you're experiencing right now because of COVID-19. So if we can go ahead and begin with Pamela.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be with all of you. And I really have been looking forward to this conversation. We need this kind of connection right now. I'm Pamela Tatge. I'm the Executive and Artistic Director at Jacob's Pillow. My pronouns are she, her. I currently am in Madison, Connecticut, which is the land of the Quinnipiac and the Hammonasset. Jacob's Pillow is on the land of the Mohican, the Nipmuc, the Pecumtuck, and the Agawam. I'm a non-disabled white woman of Italian-American heritage. I'm wearing a blue shirt. I have blonde, curly, mid-length hair, and I'm in a room with a picture of the Inside Out stage at Jacob's Pillow behind me and a desk in a white room. And a bit about what I do and what I've been facing, or should we just do the introduction now, Alejandra?
I would say do the introduction and then we can jump into some of the things you're facing.
Great. So I'm
Yeah, you can go ahead and pass it to the next person. Denise, why don't you take us away?
great.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dance NYC, for inviting us all to be here with everyone today. My name is Denise Roberts Hurlin. I am founding director of Dancers Responding to AIDS, a program of Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. My pronouns are she, her, and I am currently in Quaropas, White Plains, New York, in Westchester County, on the land of the Wickwejek. I am a non-disabled white woman of European heritage, specifically Italian and English, Irish. And I am wearing a pink dress that you sort of can see with dangly earrings and long dark hair. And I'm sitting in front of an old cupboard from my husband's family that is sitting in our dining room. Thank you. Stanford.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for including me in this. It's really lovely to be with all of you. My name is Stanford Makishi. I am the Vice President for Programming at New York City Center. My preferred pronouns are he, him, and I'm joining you from my home in northeastern Pennsylvania, which sits on Lenape land. I'm a non-disabled Asian American male of Okinawan descent. I have straight black hair that has not been cut in 4 months, and I have a mustache and beard. I'm wearing a plain gray polo shirt, and I'm sitting in a room whose walls are made of untreated pale pine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Karesia Batan. I am the founding executive director of the Queensborough Dance Festival. I am coming from you today from Sunnyside in Queens, New York, which is the land of the Munsee, Lenape, and Canarsie people. My gender pronouns are she, her. I am a non-disabled Filipino-American woman. I am wearing a black t-shirt and glasses, and I have long black hair that is currently up in a high bun. And I am sitting in front of a white wall with a poster of Sevillanas dancers and also a poster of a vintage subway map of the 5 boroughs.
Thank you all so much. So I went ahead and called in from my phone so that we didn't have any audio issues. So why don't we go ahead and jump in a little bit. I want to hear a bit about each of you and some of the things that you've been experiencing since COVID has arrived. I know that all of you have pivoted in very different ways on your festivals. Some of you, your festivals were already happening. Some of you, your festivals were about to happen. Some of you, your festivals have not yet happened. And so I want to learn a little bit about what you've been doing, and also who is the community of artists that typically would be impacted by your work? Who are the community of artists that you would typically gather, and what are some of the responses and things that they've been experiencing as you've pivoted in response to COVID? And anyone can begin.
I'll start. So I work at New York City Center, as I mentioned earlier. It's home to the Fall for Dance Festival, which traditionally opens our season. And so it's really usually the very first thing that our audiences will see in our theater. And so with a festival that begins generally either in late September or early October, we are in a period where it's nearly certain that there's absolutely no way in which we will be allowed to make that happen. Because the festival is international. We feature 20 companies from around the world. And historically, we've literally presented dance artists from every continent that has dance. And so it is a very far-reaching event in its geography, and also in its mix of dance idioms and styles. And there's so many issues that we were impacted by. First and foremost being the safety issue of just gathering people in our space, which is a 2,200 seat theater. On top of that, the international nature of the festival made it impossible to stick to the original vision for the event. We had visa issues to grapple with, so much uncertainty around borders with nations outside of the United States. So we weren't even sure who we could bring to New York City. There was that, and we didn't want to ask artists to ride on airplanes and stay in hotel rooms in New York City. We just didn't think that was such a responsible thing to be doing. And so the very essence of our festival became impossible to realize. And so we have looked at various models. We're looking at possible an online presence like everyone else. And because we're in New York City and we're subject to its guidelines, reopening guidelines that I think are fantastic and responsible, we literally have no idea when we will be able to reopen our theater. And that's where we are right now.
Thank you, Staffer.
Pamela or Denise, can you share a little bit about how both of you have, I think both of you have similar pivots in some of the things that you've done, but the nature of your work is also different. So can you share a little bit about what you've both experienced?
Sure. So, you know, we share a lot of the decisions that City Center had to make, but we had our festival was much sooner. So we are a 10-week summer festival that runs from the end of June to the end of August. In terms of scale, we invite 50 companies to perform from all over the world. We also have deep connections to sites in Berkshire County. So we're taking dance into those communities during the summer. We have a school, we have archives. And I think one thing that's true about festivals is their interrelatedness of how much of a learning community they are, how much of a crossroads they are for people to meet, make discoveries, and, you know, evolve together. So when we made that decision, we also, it's important to note, we really slashed our budget. 50% of our income is earned, so that went away. So we laid off a large percentage of our staff and had to really say, how can we fulfill our mission? And we made the decision that we would, and this is just that sort of the courage and the bravery, I would say, of our faculty in our school and our director to say, yes, we're gonna do this online and put in place a curriculum that has never been put in place before. How do you do this online? And we made the decision to have a virtual festival that would have a concentration of activity over 8 weeks. Some of the typical things people might encounter with some of the synergies. We would take advantage of what we have in our archives, which is extraordinary. And, you know, I say to Norton Owen, our director of preservation, all the time, thank goodness, you know, we had 3 camera shoots of work, so that instead of just being a documentation in the back of the house, we could actually think about streaming these performances. But we've tried to have wraparound content that's of today, that contextualizes that work for today. And we've tried to make it like this, that people have to gather in a moment to be together, because there is something about us all coming together in a single moment to make something, to witness something and experience something together. And we've leaned into our site and our history and sort of crafting what we would do. So that's for now. You know, there's a lot to talk about how we're visioning the future, but the idea was to try to keep people connected around this art form that we love, and give people the regularity of it is important, so that people could have it to look forward to, frankly. And we're all experimenting with technology. You know, there's any number of things that can go wrong and do go wrong, but I think people do have a certain degree of patience and tolerance right now of those imperfections, and that's really, really important.
Thank you so much, Pam. Denise?
It was a little bit of a challenge, obviously, for all of us, this idea of what to do March 13th was the last day we were in the office. And when I left, I never thought I wasn't going to be back before Fire Island Dance Festival was going to happen in July. And so the fact that we had to figure out what to do, not literally in our own space, but literally how to do it, to pivot in a new way. The challenge for us too is that unlike most dance festivals, ours is a benefit to raise money for the services that are provided from Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. So the grants and outreach that we have to over 470 AIDS and family service organizations around the country, which is food banks and counseling, a whole plethora of resources, as well as services to the Actors Fund, which the Dancers Resource, the Career Center, all of these providing for performing artists are still needed. It is still necessary. And it became self-evident that performing artists were in dire need of immediate emergency assistance. And so therefore, our focus became very central to providing for those performing artists. So it took us a couple of weeks to figure out that we were going to still move forward with an online festival and therefore reach out to our donors, reach out to those people who have supported us for so many years to still be with us. And it was wonderful. And it was a good spirit of community, but it was still about a third of who normally can join us. And the idea of the spirit of community also in that physical space so that dancers are together. I think Fire Island and Hudson Valley Dance Festivals are unique in that there are probably 10 different companies together for 3 to 5 days. And that spirit of sharing ideas. You never know what comes up, who you meet, how things evolve. You never know what donors you're going to meet that are going to help you. I'm a firm believer in these situations that it's collaborative development. It's my job to help artists gain more exposure and more, not only just about their craft, but also how to be viable within their own institutions themselves. So we, like I said, pivoted to an online platform, which we were able to present. As Pam said, luckily last year we had 3 cameras shooting our festival, but that is not the normal situation. So that idea, most of the time of what we do is archival. And it is surprising how just one camera angle isn't exactly the same thing as just sitting there watching it. So I think it's trying to discover how to engage people in this platform when you have various resources that are not necessarily at in your back door. So for the Hudson Valley Dance Festival, which we produce in the fall up in Catskill, New York, that will not be able to happen this year. How will that's a whole different curve, even from what we just did with Fire Island, for a lot of technical reasons, I suspect. So, anyway.
Thank you, Denise.
How many different companies do you typically bring together for the Fire Island Dance Festival?
Usually I'd say about 10 to 12. But then usually it ranges around 50 to 60 dancers at one time.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Karesia, let's hear a little bit about your work with the Queensborough Dance Festival.
Sure. So our tour usually is a tour throughout the borough of Queens, and we are very hyper-focused on the Queens dance community as well as the Queens residents as building audience connection here in this borough. So usually we are a 6-month tour. We run May through October. We present anywhere from 20 to 25 all Queens-based dance companies of different and mixed cultures and styles and classical techniques, contemporary techniques. Everybody comes together on the same platform with the common theme of we all share the same place in which we live. This year, we had to pivot really quickly, like everybody else. We started May 16th, and we decided that it was important to stay present somehow, not just for our community audiences, but for our dance community as well. It's a small but very vibrant, tight-knit community here because we also are neighbors. And we do a lot of work in the community with the different dance companies that live and work here. So we thought it was important to still keep our programming alive and active and engaging somehow. We decided to mainly work off of Instagram, which has definitely been a learning curve for everybody. I too strongly believe in a collaborative community effort in order to be able to pull something off like this and have everybody feel that they are benefiting from it, both as a dance artist and also as the audience that are being engaged in this new way. So we've been doing Instagram Live, touring the borough, visiting each dance company's home neighborhood virtually. And we leave it up to the dance company to determine what they want to do during their live session. So it ranges from demonstrations to in-home performances. A lot of these performances having to be adapted to solos or duets if they happen to be quarantining with a fellow company member, because also some of our dance companies are actually families. And then classes. So they offer a lot of dance classes. So on our Instagram platform, we've been trying to cultivate an audience that is fairly new for us because when we are live on site throughout the borough of Queens, we are almost always in outdoor public spaces. And we target neighborhoods that maybe don't typically have a lot of arts access programming in their neighborhoods or nearby. So a lot of the times we are interacting with community residents who maybe have never seen dance before, or maybe who have never even seen a particular type of dance that we happen to be presenting on site. So on Instagram, when you're now having to try and target a new audience that typically is younger on social media platforms, and who maybe have dance on their radar, it's just a slightly different approach. And but with that, the other side of the coin is we're also starting to now engage people from all over the world who happen to come across our Instagram handle based on they find us because they hear an Indian dance company is coming live this Friday, or they happen to hear that a flamenco group is coming live. And so that's been the positive of trying to build a new audience this way. And we are experimenting in the future to try and do live stream performances, but it is asking now a lot of the dancers to learn how to videotape themselves and find a space and make sure everyone is safe. And so it's an ongoing challenge for sure, but it's also been a very feel-good, rewarding experience for all of us, because we're all doing this together, and we're all doing it because we love it and we want to keep sharing it with one another.
So what's interesting about hearing you speak, Karesia, is that there are a couple of things that are important to highlight about all of the things that you're all doing. I know that for you, Pam and Karesia, one of the things that's similar is that both of you are managing indoor and outdoor performance spaces in different capacities, right? The same is true for you, Denise, right? You're looking also at indoor and outdoor performance spaces. For yours, Karesia, a lot of those outdoor spaces are spaces that are typically where community life is already occurring. It might be a block, it might be a street park, it might be a certain part of a particular neighborhood that isn't typically activated in performance. And so you're really looking at the very traditional site-specific performance model. For you, Pam and Denise, you are looking at spaces that are specifically designed for outdoor performances, but also in the moment of COVID, carry different kinds of risks and possibilities in terms of exposure. We know that so much of what's happening with COVID, and in general, so much of what's happening with this reassessment of how do people share space with one another has to do with airflow. It has to do with access to technology. The other thing that's interesting about what all of you are mentioning is the differences between the hyperlocal and the international, and how these audiences are now being reached differently, right? Stanford, you were mentioning that so many of your artists come from many other places, and a lot of the work that Fall for Dance is doing and is being interrupted by this moment is a reflection of how our dance ecology is not just a hyperlocal one, but also is in relationship with larger ecosystem-based needs, like what is the role that our dance community plays in doing advocacy around immigration? What is the role that our dance community plays with you, Denise, for example, in the kind of exchange of resources and support that it provides, right? How your service is directly feeding other social services that are instrumental and even more needed now than ever. And so what I just think is really interesting about all of your festivals is that while kind of in the most basic sense, you are providing opportunities for people to perform and show new works and or develop new works, right? Which is a foundational aspect of our dance community. Your festivals also provide opportunities for larger ecosystem-based interactions, for relationship to placemaking, for relationship to social services, for relationship to global connections. It's something that has come up in multiple of the conversations we've been hosting, how the digital model has shifted who are people's audiences. It's like a brand new landscape and a brand new kind of audience space. And there are pros and cons to that. There are demographic shifts on who has access to technology and who even enjoys technological performance. For example, Karesia, you're mentioning that a lot of your artists are using their own technology to generate their performance offerings, whereas Pam and Denise, you were describing some of the technological offerings that were infrastructures of yours that you provided on behalf of artists that facilitated this new exchange that you're in. And so I want to move a little bit into a conversation of what does this shift into a digital performance world looks like. You know, we have a question from one of our observers, Charles Santos, that says, as we move more and more into virtual experiences, are we risking the live experience? And are we training people that you can downright skip the live experience in exchange for a virtual one on their devices? How have you been navigating this move to digital? What are the things that you have found have been exciting and wonderful about it? And what are the things that you downright think suck about the digital space? And let's be candid here, because I think sometimes, you know, we're in a moment where we must find the silver linings. But I think that there are things that sometimes aren't explicit about what does it mean to move to digital? What does it mean in terms of access? What does it mean in terms of cost? What does it mean for some of that that life that was formed when we were all in space together? And any of you can begin. Stanford, Denise, go ahead.
For me, what was thrilling and exciting and, you know, about this process, because suddenly it was collaborating with some artists about how they were going to create specifically for this medium. And I collaborated this year with Stephen Petronio, Larry Kegwin, and Ayodele Cassell, and each of them presented very different looking presentations, where Larry had a very zoomography, for lack of a better word, and Stephen wanted to look at it as a film. I want to make a film. I want to, you know, so he approached that. And Ayodele was like, I have a studio in my house. I want to dance for you in my space. And so I thought that was very exciting, but it also was their interpretation, is what they felt. You know, it wasn't an outside coming in, it was their interpretation of how they were going to cope. How are they going to pivot in this medium? And then, of course, the other side of it too, and then presenting works that's already been done. I think that's harder. That's the not exciting part, probably, when you have to, when it's you know, oh, I saw that 3 years ago kind of feeling, as opposed to, oh, wow, that was an interesting way, something to watch that I would never see. And it wouldn't look the same for the proscenium. It was not meant for the proscenium. So I don't know. I think it's kind of exciting in a way to have those different views.
We have this dialogue a lot with some of our dancers as we ask them to do these Instagram lives every week. And the majority of them had never done it before. So we do a lot of practice beforehand. And I think it's this, we're just doing the best with what we have, because we all miss being together, and we all really miss live performance for a live audience, because there's something you cannot replicate precisely that feeling of shared energy in a room or in an outdoor space when you're all together and playing off of the energy of the audience and your surroundings and that whole live aspect. But we're doing what we can, right? Because we have to stay connected somehow, and we want the dancers to keep creating and having an audience somehow. So I personally think that having it be live streamed sort of speaks toward that live aspect that we're trying to hold on to somehow. Even if there are technical glitches, even if there are mistakes or something happens with the cell phone camera that we're using. But it's that excitement of something live where the magic happens, where these moments that you could never predict or practice, that makes that type of performance a special experience. And I also I understand how there is a lot more control in quality of product when you have to put something on a screen. And we've done that as well when we've asked dancers to pre-record their work, and then we will put it on the social media platforms afterwards. And there is something to that as well. But trying to recreate that live moment in time of everybody being able to come together, and that even if you're not in the same space, that somewhere in the neighborhood next to you or across the borough, they're actually doing that right now. We try to capture that and capture the audience in that moment. So we're doing the best that we can and embracing it, because safety is the utmost priority, but we definitely are all wishing we could all be together in person for sure.
I think it's so important to just acknowledge how we are all in the business of providing visceral experiences that people feel. And there's just no way that the screen at this time and how our technology is, you can feel that feeling. And to expect artists to be able to translate their work, their liveness to a screen is a lot to ask. All of our staff had to sort of learn new skills in this new era, and understanding that that's hard and that's exhausting. And so, I will say also, just even looking at videos of past works, I had to screen a lot to figure out those that actually would make sense in this environment. So it's not an easy transfer. We have to sort of acknowledge that. That said, the promise to me is who we get to reach and how available this form is in ways that it's never been before. And when I think for our first virtual event, which was called Dance We Must, 40% of the audience was new to Jacob's Pillow. So what does that mean? People who've heard about us their whole lives, artists being able to reach audiences that they've never reached before, the kind of connections that can be made. And in terms of the long term, I would love to see us be like sports teams, where you see this and you're like, oh, I've got to go see that live. That we can hope that might be a possibility in the future. That's one thing. And the other is, how will technology evolve either through AR or VR to make it so that there is more, we can represent this form better digitally. And those are areas of growth I hope that we can evolve into. But there is no substitute. And all of us are doing this because we believe in the transformative power of people, human beings, watching that human capacity in front of you and what a human can do and the hope that that gives you. That there's no substitute for that.
The three of you make such amazing points. And Pam, I agree with you. It's like we as a field have suddenly gone from being presenters of live performance essentially to like TV producers. I mean, that's what we're doing. And you know, it's interesting. In the beginning, in the first few weeks of lockdown, I think we were also hungry for art, that we were just devouring all the stuff that was being pushed out by various artists and companies. And we were so forgiving of all the glitches and of sort of the rough homemade quality of everything. And then, but then there's the flood of content, I think made it so that, you know, we really like sort of took a moment, stepped back and said, you know, but we need to actually think about quality. And I think it showed so brilliantly in both your gala, Denise, and yours, Pam. I mean, they were brilliantly executed. Like really like like you really set the bar, I think, in what online content can be. It was so rich, it was so spontaneous, it felt so, what I loved about it is that each one of your galas captured the sort of the ethos of what your organization is. I felt like, you know, the DRA felt like DRA, the glamour, the beautiful, you know, setting on the water, your guests. I mean, it was the glamorous thing that it is every year. And Pam, I think what your event did was it captured what it feels like to be at the Pillow, to feel the warmth, the rusticity of the buildings, the beauty of the campus, and the bonds between the audience members and the artists and among the artists. That was just such a beautiful thing. And I love that how very quickly we as a field have evolved. I mean, in really 4 months' time, from doing these like scrappy homemade things to like really fully produced media events. And I'm just so grateful that you and we, all of us, have joined together to just to kind of make it happen and continue to keep ourselves and the artists relevant in our community. Because I think that, you know, so many artists lost work, so many, and it feels great when we can step in and do something for some of them, not all of them, but it's been really inspiring to see what the work of others. So thank you.
I have like 3 combined follow-up questions, so bear with me and hopefully we can get to all of them. How, in part because of all of these changes, there are a few things that surface for me. For you, Pam, that do engage in not just the presenting of work during a festival, but also residencies that are tied to that for the development of work. Has this moment now shifted you into considering a new framework of developing digital residencies or residencies that encourage dance artists to really consider the role of technology in their practice and how it's perceived through technology? And so how has this moment now forced us to reevaluate how our work is being made, and are any of you seeing those shifts across what you're doing? But connected to that, as we move into technology, how is your business model shifting? What are some of the things that you're having to consider that might significantly change just permanently what you do? Are there things that you've done now that you're planning to continue to do and to keep as a part of the work that you're doing for the future? And what is the implication of that in terms of inequity, right? When we look at the Black Lives Matter movement, when we look at the huge impact on immigration that we're experiencing, not just because of COVID, but because of the underlying systems of oppression from this current administration, and the impact that already our artistic community was facing even before COVID, with the different issues around artists being able to acquire visas. How does technology now put us in a position to re-examine what inequity exists? For example, you talked about the quality, Stanford, right, of the work. And is the quality now just a question of the quality of the art, or a quality of the gear with which the art was shot, or a quality of the producers that helped to edit and put together those captures? And so how does this new pivot into technology reposition us into having a new conversation again of what equity looks like? Who has access to what, and whose work will survive this moment because they are able to appeal to our need for a different kind of engagement? So those are a whole bunch of things there. I'm gonna let you all jump into it.
Well, I'm happy to start with saying yes. In the past 4 years, we evolved Jacob's Pillow into a year-round center for research and development, an incubator for new work. So we've canceled already. I think it's 7 residencies, between now and what we would have done, in the early fall. We've made the decision that because Jacob's Pillow is a retreat, is a place that's out in the woods, that we have the opportunity to potentially host COVID safe residencies. And we are researching protocols, and our goal is to try to have some residencies begin after Indigenous Peoples Day, sort of beginning of October, and that those hopefully will continue into the spring. And in terms of the question of inequity, first of all, it was really important that we didn't presume any artists that we worked with in any of our virtual performances that were created now, not the works from the past, had any access to technology or experience in doing this. So it's a question of thinking differently about your budget. There's no longer, solely an artist fee budget. There has to be a budget for a pairing, a filmmaker, an editor, who can work with that artist. And so that is shifting where resources go. Do we have a responsibility to think about who has access to those sorts of skills and those technical capabilities? Absolutely. And they shouldn't judge, who we offer an opportunity to or not. We have to also think about this, as you said, going forward. Right now, all of our, we do a weekly broadcast of a past performance, with the artists today talking about that work. And we made the decision that we would offer it for free to make it available to the widest possible audience, and then share the proceeds with the artists as a way to try to get money to artists at this time. So will this, if we continue this moving forward, will we have to monetize this at some point? If everyone's offering this content for free, what's the moment where everybody says, okay, we've done it for free, but maybe now we have to, think about revenue generation, and what will that look like? I don't imagine, I believe that what we have learned from leaning into the digital at this time is the numbers of people that we can connect. Our job is connecting artists and audiences. We can connect way more artists and audiences than we can, because it's so difficult to get to Beckett, Massachusetts. So that will remain. What that will look like, will we charge for that? All of that is, unknown at this point.
There something that Karesia said and something that Pam said earlier about what technology has enabled us to do in terms of our audience reach. It's true. It's really significant. We have a program that we are right in the middle of running right now. In the before time, it was called Studio 5, and what it did was it allowed our audience members in a very, very intimate setting to get up close and behind the scenes with just really phenomenal dance artists working today. And, it took place in our studio, so it reached 150 people. But we did an event about 10 days ago featuring the ballerina Tyler Peck, being coached by her predecessor from New York City Ballet, the great Merrill Ashley. And it was a phenomenal coaching session. It was terrifying because we did it live in real time at the artist's request. Of course, 10 minutes before we went on, we had, Tyler had a campus-wide internet outage where she was. And then 3 minutes before her internet came back on, we all held our breaths. We made it through. It was fantastic. What was the most fantastic thing about it, though, was that it reached 14,000 people, whereas it's usually 150. And that is huge, 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 huge. And we knew that it would, this is the time of summer in ballet intensives. And so we got a list of 200 ballet academies from around the world. And we blasted an email blast to all of these students telling them that this was happening. And so, I mean, to go from 150 to 14,000 it's like, and we did it for free because we wanted it to be free. But yes, you're right, all of you, that there will come a time when we can't be giving it all away. But how to do it in a way that feels right is just something that we're still figuring out.
Of course, my mission is to fundraise. I'm utilizing beautiful, talented, wonderful, amazing people, but it is still my mission is that I am to raise money for those in need that we serve through our programs. So with that, everything that we do, even though it was free, there was an opportunity for people to become sponsors. There's an opportunity to have recognition because of the donation that they made for for Fire Island Dance Festival. But there's also, it was a very concentrated thing to say, please donate. We were asking for donations. And I know obviously that happens very often at the end of a performance. Somebody might do an audience appeal for DRA, but certainly not throughout a performance. So it became this very unusual concept that had to be incorporated in order to maintain the mission about our fundraising. But to get back to your question, Ali, about equity, about technology, and it's really true. I mean, people have different skills. People have different kinds of things. We all are interested in different. So those people who have possibly a skill set that can offer them an opportunity to create something that is visually appealing is going to be, they're at an advantage, I think, rather than someone who is creating something that's in a space that is not, when it's seen on the stage, it's amazing, but necessarily how they're capturing it from a device can be very different. And, that's a weird way to look at an equity kind of situation about capturing art.
So go ahead, Karesia.
I just had a couple of thoughts that came to mind just listening to you guys. For us at the Queensborough Dance Festival, about 98% of our programming is free to the public. In terms of wanting to stay committed to accessibility and also being able to reach a broader audience that may not be a typical dance goer, art going audience. But that idea of when will we reach that point of monetizing in order to have a new stream of revenue if we have to stay digital for the long run is definitely going to be a new approach for us. We too rely a lot on sponsorships and we try to deliberately work with local Queens-based sponsors, and a lot of them are small business. And of course, COVID had hit everybody across all industries really hard. So we had lost the majority of our sponsors for this season, which made us have to get really creative and resourceful among our community of 24 dance companies and a small remotely working production crew of about 3 people at most at any given time. So that was something. So that's something we'll definitely have to look at from the business standpoint. And the other thing that we are going to have to reconsider somehow is usually during our season we partner with different rehearsal venues such as the Youth Dance Center to offer free or subsidized rehearsal space to our companies during their season year with us. And now that that potentially is not going to be a possible offering for the unforeseen future, we're trying to figure out ways on how else can we support dancers with different career resources that would have to end up being digital or produced or given to them digitally. So needing to take a look at that and also to listen to our dancers to see what are their changing needs in their careers while we all have to pivot during this time.
One of the things that has come up several times in the comments, and I just want to take a moment to do some shout outs to folks that have been commenting and engaging. We have Andy Chang, Charmaine Warren, the folks from Dance Parade, Crystal Well, and several others. Let me just look here, Contemporary Ballet Theater, different folks that are joining us. But one of the questions that, that has surfaced is, if we do decide to move into virtual programming in a way that it isn't free, then there's this question of quality and putting live performance to be in relationship and essentially in competition with film, which is its own medium of entertainment and also its own medium of storytelling. And we look at, we're looking at a society that's very used to consuming digital content in terms of streaming and storytelling in a very particular way for a very affordable price. We look at $12.99 for Netflix, right? Or $10.99 for Hulu a month, and you get access to all of these things that are multi-million-dollar projects and productions over multiple months, and what our field might need to be in competition with. And so one of the things that is interesting for me about this that NG Chang also mentioned is the technology going to change dance? The director or the videographer might now be in part storyteller and impacting the choreographic process based on how that story might want to be told. And to me, what feels important about this moment is that a segment of our field that used to live in the shadows and sometimes struggled to find work is now suddenly front and center. Our videographers, our producers, our independent producers, our photographers, and our writers, the people that are helping us, that are now quite literally our medium through which we could experience the dance that before we used to just go and experience live. There is now a certain resurfacing of those folks that for so long hadn't been considered important players in terms of their visibility and the kind of crediting and the kind of funding that was going towards those kinds of services. Now those tables have completely switched. And so what are some of your thoughts around how this technology might now shift what you all as festival curators, right? You used to produce this opportunity for there to be an intense amount of in-person engagement at the same time. It was like Christmas. Every time we came to one of your events, it was an opportunity to have all of these presents wrapped at the same time. What does that mean now? What is your role as a festival now if we are being moved into these digital spaces? We know that in person isn't going to go away, but that's still a ways away before we can get to in person again. What is your role in the ecosystem changing, and how is your relationship to other members of our ecosystem changing as a result of this moment?
Well, I think we have to be deep listeners right now because we cannot, we have to, particularly with dance, I will say choreographers in terms of how to provide what they need to be able to make this transition for however long it lasts. And as we said, as it moves forward, I think our communities are going to need us to help heal and to imagine, new futures. So we have to, as curators, I think this time is about taking a step back and asking a lot of questions and understanding how little we know about that things have changed so profoundly that we need to take the time to understand what it is we don't know and need to know to be able to move forward. And that's what I'm feeling, and this is hugely challenging, right? Because we're still trying to have a presence. We have limited staff. We have members and donors we're responsible to. We have communities that we're responsible to and accountable to, and we want to be able to have the reflection and the reinvention time. And so holding both of those things is what, when I look at my counterparts, I see in their faces, is that having to hold both things.
I think that's all so beautifully said. One thing I was thinking about, actually listening to all three of you in earlier comments, I think you sort of touched upon the quality thing in different ways. And I think that essentially the things that are going to be competitive, Alejandra, what you asked, with other kinds of sort of arts and entertainment created to be viewed on a screen. There are essentially two kinds that can compete with that quality, I think, and that's dance that's shot beautifully for film with multi-camera shoots that Denise and Pam, you both talked about earlier, what a difference it makes to have those different vantage points to show the different sides of a performance. But also, Denise, you mentioned how you were able to show dance on film that was specifically made as film pieces. And I think that's also entirely watchable as a very high quality product if done well, with all the collaborators that you, Pam, talk about. But then there is something about the personal connection that I've felt with artists through things that are more homemade that I can never get at a live performance. At a live performance, they're sort of like, enrobed in beautiful light and costumes. They're surrounded by like other gorgeous artists, and they have all the trappings of what makes the live performance so magical. And it is in fact magic, it's stage magic. But then what we're seeing online now is, my God, Isabella Boylston, like dancing in her kitchen. I mean, like who knew that you would ever get that kind of intimate connection with an artist like that? And I think that's something that it's beyond quality, it's privilege, and that's something that I'm really enjoying. Like, of course, we don't have time to see all of it because there's just so much of it, but it's been really fantastic to have that kind of human connection that we never have had before, which I think is exciting.
I think the intimacy of what you're talking about really is special, right? Even though we're so distant because we can't touch anything, but that it is an intimate moment that you're getting. I think it will be interesting to see how dance makers begin to see themselves. Do they evolve and want to make art for this medium, or is it more of a retreat? Or how will that play out too as time goes on? I'll be curious to see how that goes.
Yeah, I think the intimacy that's almost organically happening, both because there is a yearning from the artist side that we're observing of how much they do want to connect and how aware they are that it has to be through a screen. But I agree with Stanford. It's an opportunity that's coming up in this medium now, because we have to perform this way, or because we are asking dancers to share their work in this way, that they end up sharing a very human side of themselves that, as you say, we don't usually get the chance to do that and to connect with the artists individually like that when we are entering a performance space, whether that's indoors or outdoors, when we're typically in person. So I definitely think this is a way to think of it as an opportunity for the audiences to get more of an inside look on what's going on with each of these dancers. And everybody has had such an inspiring story in how they are responding, not just as artists, but just as human beings in their day-to-day life during this time. And we're already seeing changes from, you know, when the dancers were first starting to experience lockdown 5 months ago now, and how this experience is affecting their work. So even within these 5 months, we do allow the flexibility if their work starts changing and they want to show this instead, or they want to talk about this particular aspect with our online audience instead, where we want to embrace that and support that, because I think that would resonate with our viewers in a way that maybe we wouldn't get to reach them before. And then the other thought I had is in terms of I'm interested too to see how the dancers will react and evolve when they have to maintain engaging and creating this way. Right now, I think there is a little bit of hesitancy and dare I say resistance, just because there is so much that the dancers now have to learn that may not really relate to their creative process choreographically and artistically. They don't really want to learn all these technological skills and social media, this and that. So I think it's starting to become our role as well as a festival presenter to help ease and cushion and make that tool set a little bit more digestible, and show how can we show them that it's a way to better uplift and promote their work when we are in this situation that we have to present this way.
And Karesia, I think you make such an important point about really how vulnerable artists are right now in this time of transition, and how our role is to support them and be in dialogue with them, so that you know, we've got their back is really a role that we have now as curators in ways that maybe we never imagined we would have in quite in this way.
So another moment of transparency is 7:03. This event was supposed to end at 7 o'clock, but due to the technical difficulties, because we had to start 15 minutes late, we will be going to 7:15 for our viewers to be aware of. And also just wanted to take a moment to shout out a few folks that are joining us on the digital space. We have Coco Dance Festival, a contemporary dance festival from Trinidad and Tobago, actually joining us in today's conversation. Gotham Dance Theater, Christina Gianelli, Tere O'Connor, Christina Way. We have different folks that are commenting on the digital space. One thing that is important that's being mentioned here, right, is these intimate experiences didn't only occur in the digital space, right? We've had actually the nightlife, the burlesque, the different kind of smaller intimate dance performances, the single dancer in the small bar performances that used to happen in live settings before. And so we've shifted this model, right, of what intimacy means. Given our form, given that it's a form of the body, and that now in many ways, the intimacy of Isabella's kitchen, for example, is up for consumption. We know that in the past, the kind of barrier that allowed folks to engage with these kind of either intimate relationship to artists or ability to experience these exchanges of art was a ticket price. And typically the ticket price was mostly associated with the cost for putting the thing on, right? Either paying the artist or putting the roof or the lights on or whatnot. But it also, with time, when we look at, for example, the super high ticket prices for a performance like, say, the Nutcracker in Christmas, that somebody might not even be able to afford. What do you think this new shift of technology means when we're thinking about the valuation of the work of the artist, of how necessary and important this bodily work is, and how are we going to begin to determine now that there is so much free stuff, that there is so much look at me dancing in my kitchen? Or, for example, I know that Kinetic Light and a variety of disabled dance artists did a series of digital performances of dance in private spaces, in their bathrooms, in their beds. And we're seeing a very different light of performance, but also it's inviting a different kind of consumption to an art form that maybe we haven't always valued. And an artist community that doesn't always see the financial benefit of its work. I mean, we think about how many dance artists still have no labor protections, no health insurance, that there aren't wage standards in our community yet for dance. How, in your relationship as presenters, are you beginning to think about, okay, well, we are in many ways the festival presenters and we are the tastemakers. How are we positioning these different kinds of experiences and performers? How are we ensuring that what our audiences are seeing is a true reflection of our community? I think a lot about which artist has the kitchen that they do want to show on Instagram Live that will be seen by hundreds of people. You know, so what does that mean now for you all as you consider these different kinds of experiences, the dance film versus the multi-camera dance shoot versus the intimate? And what does that say for you about what is and isn't working about our sector in terms of valuing artists?
That is a huge question. And as relates to the digital space, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, because in the past, the model was you pay artists, they perform 2 times, 5 times, and that's it. That's really kind of what an engagement means. And now we're asking artists, and we're paying them, thankfully, to create content that's digital. But then after we air it, we hold on to this asset that's their work. And I've been thinking a lot about how to compensate artists fairly for that product. It's now this tangible thing that we can hold on to and show again and again and again. And as we think about ways to make it make sense to monetize, then suddenly that relationship, the financial relationship with the artist, has changed, because we're possibly not using it as we originally used it. And then and so that's, my answer is I don't know, because it is such a new time and such a new way of working, but it is something that I have been thinking about, because as we begin to write our contracts for this kind of work, that all has to be in there so that it's not an afterthought. It's like, oh, I forgot to ask you in the summer of 2020 about distribution. It's now 2022 and boy, did you create something beautiful. I just want to show it again, so we have to think about that now, is something that I just wanted to put out there.
I think for us in Queens, our mission at the festival is to garner a greater appreciation for Queens dance, as well as to strengthen the dance community in Queens here. So Alejandra, when you say tastemaking, it just made me think about, well, we're here trying to elevate the Queens dance landscape, and we're also trying to raise its value in the public eye so that local dancers from this borough are on people's radars, especially Queens residents' radars, that there's something to be seen here, that you don't necessarily have to go to other boroughs or other places to only be able to experience dance. So with that tastemaking kind of approach in mind, I think really getting to know our audiences right now, how the audience's tastes may have been shifting now that they are mainly experiencing dance performances or dance programming now on a digital platform. So checking in with them to see what best engages them and how and why. So that was one thought that I had about the type of consumption, and also again listening to our dancers, because as you say, the different dance companies will have different ideas of, for example, you know, do they want to show their kitchen, or do they want to show their living room, or do they actually have a creative setup that they've already practiced and want to present, and that's been happening with our Instagram live sessions. Is we get to see a peek of how each company in their homes have decided to present themselves, and what they want to share, and what aspects that they want to share, not just about their work, but of their own background in dance, or maybe of their own cultural heritage as well. And they are allowing us into their home. So being able to be flexible and adaptable to the different needs and choices of each company as we work with them has been really important and integral to be able to make sure that they are being portrayed in the way that they want, and collectively as a group, making sure that we are still uplifting our mission together.
So as we close out, we are 3 minutes to the end. This feels like an important question to end with. We've heard a lot of conversation across the field of folks saying there was a lot that wasn't working before COVID, and COVID made it plenty clear. What was not working for festivals before COVID, and how has what COVID brought to the surface presented an opportunity for you all to think of what's next? What was not working before? And therefore, given this moment, what do you think is next?
Well, if I may, it's the gigantic topic that we didn't really get to in this conversation, and that's the current movement to combat, you know, social and racial injustice. And I think what hadn't been working is including a multitude of voices in the decision-making process and in the curatorial process. That will take probably a lot of effort. Obviously, it'll take a lot of work to correct, but that is something that needs to be addressed. We need to put decision-making power into the hands of BIPOC artists and curators and consultants and advisors and artistic directors. All of that needs to happen. But that's many conversations to have that we cannot talk about in 30 seconds.
I think it's to me, you know, if I think about what we were talking about just before COVID, is who are we here for, and who belongs at Jacob's Pillow, and who feels that they belong at Jacob's Pillow. And a real what hasn't been working was the fact that we did not have the broadest possible reflection of our society in our audiences. And we were not a place that enough people felt that they belonged. So what we have to do is use this moment to reflect on how we are going to reimagine that future, so that this 88-year-old institution goes into an era where it is more, that more people feel that they belong. And that's going to come with a lot of structural and systemic change. And like the last weekend in February, our entire staff had PSAB training. was all fired up about, what was next. And this has been a time of real reflection. And as I said, holding a lot. But I feel like what we all have is this need to accelerate our actions in really important ways.
I think that for me, the idea of serving a population of donors for Fire Island, that it was this very small, insulated place, that the idea that now we could maybe touch a broad group of people is exciting and feels it's challenging. But I think this whole experience has allowed me to see beyond just those who actually bought a ticket to come and see the show or shows. So I think that for all of us maybe is something that it's positive to hopefully touch a broader base of people. Not just, those on the stage, but what's watching.
Karesia, any closing thoughts for you?
Sure, yes, I wasn't sure if we were allowed to. For us moving forward, we can't, once we do see the other side of this, we can't forget what we all went through and what all of our dancers are still going through. And so I think for what this is teaching me as a person, not just as a presenter, is wanting to heighten the sensitivity and also the awareness of the so many different struggles and outcomes that are coming from this time, not just because of COVID, but also because of Black Lives Matters and that ripple out effect through our industry and through COVID, and trying to figure out ways to improve our services with heightened sensitivity and response to these effects that are happening, as well as communication. How can we help better communicate with the varying different needs of our dancers and our audience populations? And how can we also facilitate productive and a deeper understanding and communication among the dance groups, so that they have human paths of dialogue to connect, that we're still all in this together, even if you are practicing this particular dance technique and you are practicing this one that's completely different. But the human experience is first and foremost. So that's something that we are definitely reflecting on how to how to practice that better moving forward with our programming.
Thank you all so much. As we close out, I've been prompting a lot of questions, but is there anything that you thought of or had in your heart when you came into this conversation that you just wanted to share that you didn't get a chance to share? That's your chance. All right, it looks like you all got it all out there. Thank you so very much for joining us for this conversation. I just wanted to also thank all of the folks that join us digitally. I know we had some new folks join us, Gabri Krista, Lucy Sexton, and other folks in our community, and to our wonderful panelists for everything that they've shared with us today and all of the work that they're doing to continue to support artists and continue to address the internal work within their organizations in a way that is a reflection of what this moment is calling all of us in the field to do. As a reminder to all of you, our current campaign, Artists Are Necessary Workers, this particular aspect of our campaign, our weekly Tuesday conversations, will end next week. But we know that artists will continue to be necessary workers as we move through the rest of this year and quite literally into this new era that we're experiencing as a community. And so we invite you all to remain a part of this conversation, and as a field, as we continue to think about what is needed for the future and what is needed for the very workers that make up who we are. I encourage all of you to take a moment and fill out our post-event survey. It's incredibly helpful to us to hear from you, to hear about what is working, what isn't working, what do you want to hear more of. Next week, we will be back here on Tuesday, August 4th, for our last conversation, 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for our closing conversation of dance as dignified labor. We're going to have some wonderful folks, Cliff Matias, the Cultural Director of Red Hawk Native American Arts Council, Courtney J. Cook, performer, Bold facilitator, co-rehearsal director with Urban Bush Women, and performer with MB Dance, a mover, virtual artist, vocalist, and creative collaborator. Georgina Pascoguin, New York City ballet soloist and co-founder of A Final Bow for Yellowface. And Sheila Lewandowski, the executive director of the Chocolate Factory Theater, excuse me. We will continue to post any of the resources that were shared today on our resources page for the Artists Are Necessary Workers event. And we encourage you to give us any feedback that you may have. We are so grateful to our friends over at LT Interpreting Services and Viscardi Center for Accessibility Services for their ASL and closed captioning provision this evening. Our incredible staff and team that rolled with the punches today with all of the different technical difficulties. We're so very grateful, particularly for our amazing in-house curator, Candace Thompson-Zachary, for putting this series together so very beautifully. And lastly, and most importantly, I want to thank the many folks of our cities, our frontline workers, our artists, and all of you that make up our dance ecology. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening.